be pushing for during this COP. And for that, this comes at the right time, this initiative that we are going to talk about, the regional integrated initiative that addresses the needs of Africa, but also how Africa actually can spearhead a transformative process of addressing its problems, its climate problems, through an integrated process, through a multi-partnership process, and by working across with government, private sector, SMEs, and this is what we will hear from the 5 sub-regions of Africa. This initiative, actually the regional integrated initiative, has 3 important initiatives that work together, but also work through a number of CGIAR centers, which are here. I'm not going to list them all. You will be hearing about them from the people who will present the initiatives. Let me also emphasize the importance of this of today's side event. What we're looking for is to look at how can we capture the lessons learned from the 3 different initiatives for Egypt and for Africa, who will be delivering a keynote address, and leader of the policy innovation systems in the CGIAR. And then we have our Diversity and Crop Improvement Program Director at ICARDA, and he will be presenting the Siwana initiative. And then we will go into a panel discussion that Dr. Evan will moderate, will facilitate. So, Your Excellency, the floor is yours to deliver a keynote address. Please go ahead.
Of presentation or keynote in the sense of having a long speech. For this first booth, I think, in the COP.
Central and Western Asia. I miss here one of them. So basically, let me just go through the regions themselves. I see they are here, but here, if I see my pointer, Eastern and Southern Africa, Central and West Africa, and Central and Western Asia. Huge regions, huge numbers of countries, and where we have major issues. So it's collaboratively designed with over 2,000 stakeholders, and it's responsive to stakeholder demand. Researching, designing, and delivering innovations on key issues and on the ground. We are also a CGIAR on the ground together with the partners. So we have here in the different regions, we have the different focus of the initiatives. So Western Central Africa is market-driven, resilient and nutritious agri-food systems in the humid zones of Western Central Africa. And I hope soon we can start one in the Sahelian zone as well. And then, of course, we have in Eastern Southern Africa, diversification for resilient agri-business ecosystems in East and Southern Africa. And we have the Savanna from fragility to resilience in Central and West Asia and North Africa, transforming responses to drought and climate variability. Major challenges. And of course, many stakeholders have been involved in designing them. Now, just quickly on the 3 of them, in the Savanna area, from fragility to resilience, Egypt has to play, of course, a very important role here. The desertification, the fragility, I don't have to mention it, you all know, but we have to see how can we build resilient systems. Only the solution also for the current crisis with food in Ukraine, we need local resilient agri-food systems that can deliver. So robust regulation, governance, manage climate risk, nutritious climate resilient food, diversification, etc. And Ukama Ustawi is basically diversification of maize-based systems for resilient agri-food systems. in Eastern Southern Africa. So we already have now 6 million hectares of drought-tolerant maize that was developed by the CGIAR and basically distributed, scaled by small seed companies. But we need to go to other crops as well. We need to diversify the systems. We need entrepreneurship, and we need also a better healthy diets. And that's also why this initiative focus on that one. You will get explanations in detail of the initiatives, and later on you can look at these slides, but the slides of my colleagues are, of course, much more going in detail. And then in West and Central Africa, of course, growing population, low sector productivity, climate change as well, reduced biodiversity, but also the landscape are degrading, and we see that a lot in Africa as a whole. And the markets and value chains are fragmented, youth and women with low participation. So also with this initiative, we start looking for solutions. We started this year with these initiatives, and I hope that they will be growing and growing and growing and growing. Impact at scale. And scale means really scale, millions of farmers that we can hopefully improve the livelihoods of the people and indeed have better, sufficient, affordable, healthy diets produced within planetary boundaries. Thank you so much, and hopefully later on this week I will see you in Egypt as well, and I hope that food security, nutrition security in relation to climate change will be this time also in the heart of the COP27. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martin. Please stay with us online for the discussion later on. Thank you for a very comprehensive presentation. What I really like about it is that it shows how research at a regional level can have a role to inform the global level, not just the global informing the regional. And these are very important dimensions to strengthen the science policy interface and influence the decisions of policymakers and negotiators, which is what we have today in the COP. Let me now turn to the three initiatives. Let me turn to Evan, and then Martin, and then Michael, and maybe later on, before we go to the panel, I will see if His Excellency has a few words or comments on the presentation. So maybe later on we will see if he would like to ask questions or raise some comments. Evan, you will be presenting instead of Inga. Inga, yeah, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's great to be here with you here in Sharm el-Sheikh. Again, my name is Evan Gervets. I'm a principal scientist at the Alliance of Biodiversity International and the International Center for Tropical Agriculture. I myself am based in Nairobi, Kenya. I send the regrets of my colleague Inga Jacobs-Matta, Dr. Inga Jacobs-Matta, who is still on a plane getting here today. She's the lead of this initiative, and I'm the co-lead along with her of this regional initiative called Ukama Ustawi, focusing on East and Southern Africa. Now we go forward, as we have a video to start off, and actually get to see Inga here, so I have a pleasure of sharing her with you, but okay, the video is not working, so we will skip that then, and we'll move on to the presentation itself. Let's see, maybe I just go back then. Okay, so I'll start by mentioning that Ukama Ustawi itself, the name itself, is a combination of a Swahili word and a Shona word representing the East and Southern Africa focus of this. As Martin Kropp just mentioned, the focus is on the maize mix systems and the challenges that he laid out there for these maize mix systems in East and Southern Africa. Now, the two words themselves bring together the concept of partnership and community on the one hand, and prosperity and improved livelihoods on the other hand. And really, that's what this initiative is about how we can work through partnerships to bring prosperity and improve livelihoods to the people, the farmers, and the food systems that we're working in these systems in East and Southern Africa. Now, the ultimate objective of this initiative is fourfold, really. Now, these four outcomes I'm going to present here in a moment are going to be across the 12 countries that we're focused on in East and Southern Africa that you can see here in these maps. And the goal there is to, by 2024, to reach 50,000 farmers, 40% of women, 40% of youth, that are using climate-smart intensification and diversification practices with improved land and water management, really targeting these interventions on the farm. Then second, 1 million farmers on the farm also, and other value chain actors, also 40% women and 40% youth, who are accessing bundled digital agro-advisory and risk management services to improve the way that they're managing their farms. So reaching them through innovative digital technologies to get better information to them. Now third, at least 30 startups and MSCs that we are supporting through acceleration and incubation programs that we're working on to improve how they are operating and supporting the agri-food systems that we're focused on. And then finally, that we're unlocking $100 million of investment into the agri-food systems in this region, working through policy processes and engaging with climate finance and other funders that are focused on the priorities that we are focused on here in this region. Now we do this in some different ways that we're working. And the first is really to say that we want to be understanding the problem and as well as the solutions through different kinds of assessments. So for example, from maps and models to look at the feasibility and viability studies for irrigation, mechanization, livestock integration. So this is taking maps in different ways and understanding where different kinds of interventions are most appropriate for the farmers and agri-food system actors that we're working with on the ground in these places. So bring this kind of information that we can bring to better understand what is the best solution for the farmers that we're working with there. Now second, really to the farm. So not just using maps, but actually going down on the farm and being able to bring those technologies to the farmers that we're working with. Here is an example of a starter pack machinery selection and procurement for mechanization in Zimbabwe and Zambia, where different kinds of two-wheel and other types of mechanization tractors are being brought to these farmers there, such as sprayers, rippers to support in conservation tillage, a multi-crop thresher for post-harvest management, et cetera, as you can see here. So bringing mechanization to farmers in an appropriate way and an appropriate scale that they can afford to help them improve their productivity on their farms. Then really to the people. So technology is important, but really we see it being very important for how we work with the people, strengthening and technology socialization. So capacity building as being a key part of the CGIAR theory of change and something that we see as very important here. In Kenya, training and on-site cooking demonstrations of beans in Machakos County as one example of that. In Malawi, 10 cooking demonstrations in Dedza and in Zimba, bean flour complementary porridge, bean-based snacks, and bean soup. So teaching, building capacity on how to use beans for improved nutrition. And then in Zambia, training of 143 World Vision community health volunteers, both males and females, processing high iron and zinc beans to produce weaning porridges, blending flours, muffins, bean puree, cupcakes that are being developed there. So really reaching farmers on the ground with capacity building for how to improve their nutrition to use the kind of crops that they're producing. And then to the TV, and one of our partners that we'll highlight here in a moment is going to share this here. How we can reach farmers at scale through TV, and working with our partners at Media Eye Company who produced the Shamba Shape Up TV program, which we are now bringing to Zambia also. The Shamba Shape Up TV program, as our partners will explain in a moment, is a farm makeover program. Kind of like in the US or Europe where you see they come to a house and they show somebody how to make their house nicer by painting it in different ways or doing some kind of remodeling to it. This goes to the farm and shows real farmers on the ground, asks them what challenges they have, and shows them how they can be improving the kind of farm management that would help them do better for their livelihoods, and climate being one of the key challenges that are highlighted in climate smart agriculture being promoted here. There's some examples over here, the kind of partners that we work with through this TV show and the kinds of interventions that are being demonstrated, shown really, on these real farms. These are not demonstration farms. These are real farmers that are being videoed out there with real experts, local experts, coming to help them improve their farms there at some different farms here in Zambia. It's been successful in Kenya for over a decade, reaching now over 8 million viewers per week in Kenya in both English and Swahili. And just this month, it's being launched in Zambia as called Munda Makeover. Shamba's a Swahili word, and they don't speak Swahili there, so it's called Munda Makeover in Zambia is the TV show that we are working on scaling out with our partners there in Zambia. And then I was mentioning the agribusiness, the focus on agribusinesses, and we see to support the agribusiness ecosystem as being very important, that we can work with farmers on the ground, we can build capacity, but if they don't have the SMEs there that they can go to buy their inputs or to get the services that they need to improve their farms in the way they need to be more resilient for climate change, then they won't be able to do that without the support of these businesses. So we're focused on agribusiness acceleration, and facilitating investment into these agribusinesses that are supporting climate smart agriculture. Just an example of a bit of how this is going is there's market analysis that's being done in terms of what are the kind of SMEs that are out there and the kind of support that they need. Looking at different bundles or services that those SMEs can be providing to farmers. What do farmers need, and making sure that those are being provided by these SMEs, or building their capacity to be able to provide those kind of services. To validate those services with farmers and with the SMEs, that there's something that there is a business proposition there. And then running through an acceleration program where there's a call for applications and evaluation, and then the acceleration work that is being done with the SMEs. We have a target of facilitating $5 million US in additional funding, grant, equity, and debt to a portfolio of 30 agribusinesses that are supported through the Ukama Ustawi initiative. And then I want to mention that the initiative is very focused on scaling in general. And being a research organization, we do want to work on capacity building. We want to work on delivering innovations on the ground, but we also want to be working on how we can ensure that scaling is being done in the proper way. And so what we're doing is looking across different innovations that can address climate and other agricultural challenges that are out there, but a long list of them, profiling them in different ways, and then filtering them down to develop innovation packages for scaling ready innovations, identifying which innovations are actually scaling ready and which ones really need some more work before they should be promoted out there with farmers, and then developing the scaling strategies for how we can get these innovations out to farmers. Maybe it's through TV, maybe it's through digital technologies, maybe it's through innovative extension, maybe it's through agribusiness support that they need for that. And so the entire initiative itself is really focused on scaling, how we can be working in different ways to, again, deliver those technologies for diversification and intensification to build resilience on the farm, to deliver digital technologies to farmers, to be supporting the agribusiness ecosystem at scale, and to be working also then scaling through policy processes as one point that we see is important. I already mentioned, but I want to emphasize that gender and youth are very important to this initiative. It's a key target for how we work in it. And then, as I'm mentioning here, all of this being run through a lens and a strategy of scaling to make sure that we can reach the number of beneficiaries that we're looking for in this initiative. And I just want to end to say that the Ukama Ustawi is really about coming together, and that it's together we grow and we develop. And so our partnerships are very important for us, and we look forward to highlighting some of those partnerships in the panel as we come up. Thank you. I'll pass on to Michael now. It's just the way it's coming on the slide. So.
No problem. Okay, you can hear me, right? So I'm going to talk to you about the initiative Fragility to Resilience in Central and West Asia and North Africa. So it's actually covering two areas, so Africa as well as Asia. And but 3 countries that we selected initially are in Africa. So that's why we still think it's an African initiative, because of course there are a total of 29 countries in Tijuana, and of course you cannot, with a limited budget, you cannot really work in all of them and do all the same things. So that's why a lot of about this initiative is prioritization, and so that you select some and you start with, and then hopefully over this regional integrated initiative will run over 10 years, so that eventually you can reach all the countries. So initially we have selected Morocco to represent the rain-fed systems of North Africa, to be a representative for the rain-fed systems in North Africa. And so the innovations that we develop there can be outscaled also to the other countries like Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and so on. Then we have selected Egypt as representative for the Nile Valley. Then Lebanon for the somewhat colder areas in West Asia, and Uzbekistan for Central Asia. And then we have we realized that these are all 4 middle-income countries. We need to have at least a low-income country, and we have added Sudan with all its problems and so on. Although it's somewhat similar to Egypt, but so that's what to start with, and then we hope, as I said, over the time frame of the next 10 years, that we can add all the 29 countries that in CGIAR. We have already some candidates. So, for instance, Syria has said we will join CGIAR on our own with our own money. Syria is a member of the CGIAR, pays a membership every year, and they said so we will dedicate some of the funding to this initiative. We join this on our own cost. Turkey wants to do the same. So that is a kind of also to see that national programs buy in and support this initiative. So similar as was shown for Southern and Eastern Africa. So all the initiative, they project the benefits, what they want to achieve over the time frame of the next 10 years. I mean, to benefit about 3.5 million people in the 5 countries, to benefit 1.7 million women and 1.2 million youth, to benefit 2.4 million people that will be using climate-adapted innovations, and then improving management of the land. We hope that 4.3 million hectares benefit from this one. That's very important to us. And then also very important that we hope that we reduce the water use, and that less water, as the minister said, that the systems become more productive, and more crop per drop is being produced with the innovations that we have in that space. You cannot do everything. Again, you have to prioritize. So we have, like each of the initiatives, they select certain work packages, certain expertises that they would like to use. So we have in work package 1, where we talk about innovation platform, living labs. So that's where we concentrate and focus the innovations, because as was said, I mean, we're looking into many different innovations, and but sometimes the innovations don't work in the same direction. As we talk about systems approach, so that we want to improve the agriculture system, so we need to see, that all the innovations that we scale out, that they work in the same directions, and not that one is positive, the other is negative, and basically you don't get any change. So that's why these ones are tested in the so-called innovation platforms or living labs, and then those ones that fit together, they are scaled out together. In work package 2 is everything about varieties and agrobiodiversity. And work package 3 is about sustainable farming system, especially agronomy, which in some countries is very important. And in work package 4 is integrated food, water, and land systems. So this work package is led by IMI, and as was also said, that these regional integrated initiatives, they link with global initiatives. So we are on the ground. We try to improve the systems on the ground, but innovations come also from the global initiatives. So work package 4 especially is from Nexus Gain as a global initiative, and then also World Fish is part of work package 4. And work package 5 is about digital tools and scaling innovations. Accelerators were mentioned, is also an important component for this initiative. As I said, so we select a few sites in the countries. So for instance, in Morocco, we work in Mashoush, in Uzbekistan, in Karshi, in Lebanon in Turbol, in Sudan in Wad Medani, and in Egypt in Sitz. So that's where we test the innovations next to each other before we scale them out. Work Package 2 is about participatory product profile performance. It is to bring the best bet innovations in terms of crops from the global initiatives. We don't want to do everything by ourselves. I mean, as Martin has explained in the beginning, there are global initiatives working on breeding. From those initiatives, we bring the best varieties that fit in these agricultural scenes. For instance, in Egypt, we will employ wheat and rice and potatoes, and from the global players that produce the best adapted varieties. We test them, and then we provide feedback also to these initiatives, so that we work with the latest technologies. And especially here, drought resistance, heat tolerance. These are some of the varieties that we really need in order to be successful in these countries. In Work Package 3, we work with the Excellence in Agronomy initiative. That's also a global initiative. Here, very important, as also was said, is the scale-appropriate mechanization. There's a lot of technology outside there, but often developed in advanced countries, and they are too expensive for a small-scale farmer in this region. So that's why all the initiatives, they have an emphasis on scale-appropriate mechanization. So a zero-till planter that a farmer can afford, and then also to design the national systems that help to provide subsidies so that the farmers can actually use it. For instance, in Morocco, if you buy a zero-till planter, you get subsidies from the government, more subsidies than if you buy a conventional planter. So that helps really the farmers so we want to work with the governments really to help to bring the right technology for the small-scale farmers. As I said, in Work Package 4 and 5, this is led by IMI. So there are smart tools for water efficiency and water management, also together with World Fish. So there's a lot of technology available that can help us really to be more efficient, and especially in these regions where climate change is really at the forefront, and this region which is really a climate hotspot, and so that's why everything related to water, we need to keep a special eye on this one. And then Work Package 5, we have the digital tools that we use, also related to water, but also the digital revolution has really find its place in agriculture. I mean, digital tools, we use drone technology, we use satellite imaging to monitor pests and diseases, and so there's a lot of new technologies in the digital space that really can help us to make our systems more efficient. And that's in a nutshell what we will do in Siwana, hopefully. And so please come to visit us now and then and see what we were able to do, and if we are successful in changing the life of the smallholder farmers in Siwana. And thank you.
And I think you guys are starting to see some trends across the different regions, common themes that are coming up. And so I want to turn now to West and Central Africa. This initiative called Transforming Agri-Food Systems in West and Central Africa. This is on behalf of Amanu Aruna, Dr. Amanu Aruna, who unfortunately cannot be here today, but I'm giving the presentation on his behalf, as well as Dr. Regina Kapinga, who are the lead and co-lead for this initiative. Just a quick outline here, maybe in the interest of time, I'll jump to the first slide and say that the initiative itself is focused across 22 West African countries, but has a specific focus on 4, as you can see here, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire are the 4 focus countries for the beginning of this to address the 5 key impact areas of the CGIAR that you can see down here on nutrition, health, and food security, poverty reduction and livelihoods, gender and social equity, climate adaptation and mitigation, and environment and biodiversity. Now, this is being addressed through the lens of these 4 areas here. So some key questions that are being asked. First, on climate. How can smallholder farming systems be made more productive and adaptive to climate change? Second, through the lens of food. What are the critical factors that incite customer demand for biofortified and other nutritious foods? Then through the lens of markets. What are the determinants to seek for and adapt or adopt digital-based knowledge information systems? And then finally on the bottom, and sorry you can't see it, through the lens of youth and women, what are the social constraints that affect gender equality in agribusinesses? So these are some of the key questions that this research initiative is addressing, and I think as you reflect on the other 2 that we saw, you see the commonalities across these regional initiatives, but how they're being tailored then, and what I want to show you, to the specific regions that they're focusing in on. Now there's 5 key areas of science that this initiative is looking at, and this maps to 5 different work packages, as you've seen in the other initiatives similarly. First, making food systems more nutritious, safe, and resilient to climate change. That's one key area of work. Second, promoting digitalized information systems and bundling innovations at the landscape scale. Third, participatory tool set for inclusive landscape management and citizen science for One Health. Fourth, addressing social barriers to create equity for women and youth doing business in value chains. And then the 5th one is taking to scale innovations with proven impact in the region. So again, a focus on scaling while addressing the other areas that I was mentioning there. And as I was saying, these are put into 5 different work packages, the first one being sustainable intensification and diversification for nutritious and safe food and resilient food production. The second work package being informed digital agriculture for resilience. The third being on sustainable and inclusive landscape management. These 3 being key and focusing in or being put through the lens of youth and women entrepreneurs models that can be promoted. And then finally through the innovation platform and scaling readiness process to be accelerating the impact of investments and catalyzing impact at scale through scaling approaches. And as you saw in the other initiatives, similar to that this is focusing on. This initiative can't do everything everywhere, and same thing Michael was saying. So it's focusing in on some specific parts of West and Central Africa. I mentioned the countries, but even within those countries, in the first phase is focused on the humid and the transition zones, and in the second phase then would come the arid and semi-arid zones to have a focus on specific commodities that this is focused on: root, tubers, and bananas, cereals, rice and maize-based systems, legumes, cowpeas and beans, and then also vegetables and inland fish. So some focus, still a lot there because we want to make sure that it's diversified, and we're addressing the diversification, but still focusing on some key commodities and value chains. And then the geographic focus that I mentioned: Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, DRC, also Rwanda and Burundi in the first phase. Looking at it, kind of a transition then to Cameroon, Benin, and Liberia, and then finally the Sahelian countries would be the third phase for this. As I mentioned with the other initiatives, partnerships are key for this initiative also. And so I won't go through all of these here, but say that there are a lot of partnerships that are being developed between the CGIAR and the partners that are core partners, and then other partners that are being brought in different ways to this initiative here. And you can see the list of many across different countries that are here, new agreements that are coming in, some agreements that are under negotiation, and then building on existing partnerships that can be leveraged from the past decades of work that have been done in the region here. And then also internally within the CGIAR, and Michael was pointing to this some also, that These regional initiatives, also Martin Kropf highlighted this, these do not work in a vacuum. These are linked to the global initiatives and even other regional initiatives that are out there. So, for example, the West and Central Africa Initiative is also working with the Excellence in Agronomy and Sustainable Intensification Initiatives on that agronomic work for sustainable intensification and climate change adaptation. The CGIAR initiative, which is focused on seed systems, is helping or working with this initiative for quality seed for delivering genetic gains in farmer fields. This initiative in West and Central Africa is also linking with Ukama Ustawi, the one I presented at the beginning for East and Southern Africa. And because both initiatives are working on diversification for resilient agri-food systems, they're working together, and certainly there are issues that cross between West and Central Africa and East and Southern Africa, even North Africa also, so bringing these together in that way. And then finally, Her Plus, which is an initiative that's working with West and Central Africa to deliver gender and social equality for resilience in agri-food systems, and that's linked to the different work packages that are out there. So with this, I want to just highlight the different partners that are involved in this initiative too, and thank you for your time right now, and I look forward to having the discussion with the partners that we have, the panelists, and hearing reactions that are from you here today. So thank you.
Thank you, Evan. You've done a great job, really, presenting on behalf of colleagues. Before we get to the panel, we have a few minutes. Maybe, Your Excellency, would you like to comment on the initiatives and your reflections on how such research initiatives could really inform well? What does it take for the governments in the region to adopt and make them mainstream?
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting presentations that are really very helpful. I think somebody like me who moved from the university to the practical work and decision making in the country, we always would like to see research that helps us in making our decisions. So I'm asking myself always, is it still possible in such a position to make science-based or evidence-based decisions, and how we can do that? Always reviewing what we are discussing and what we are trying to implement for enhancing the water and agriculture system based on the results of research. And I think that is very helpful for me, and that's maybe the main motivation for me to stay, to listen to such very interesting initiatives and projects, because they really have some very interesting keywords that helps any decision maker in the future. So I think also here the word intensification, and I thank you for bringing the word sustainable intensification to this, because we have to be very careful when we speak about intensification. All what deteriorated our soil and our water in the previous years was the intensification, but not the sustainable intensification. So I thank you for mentioning it many times in the last presentation, because this is really very important to think always about green sustainable intensification process. Scalability and scaling up our research and reaching the TRL, or the technology readiness level, that really brings our research to the implementation. It's very important, and it's always challenging in the last phase. You find very interesting research, very interesting publications, but they never come to the implementation, because the last phase of the TRL 6, 7, 8, and 9, that's the challenge. And that's really my interest in this position as a decision maker in the country, is trying to bring the researchers to the phase of pilot implementation, semi-commercial, then commercial, and to the commercial implementation at the end. And that's a big challenge. And I thank you also for the initiatives, and you are tackling this scalability issue in your project. That's also very important, and I stress on the importance of this in bringing research from the labs to the practice. When you mention crop varieties, I believe this is part of the solution, to have the crop varieties that are really tolerant to drought, but also tolerant to the salt. So crops and products that really can tolerate salty water, that's very needed in Africa. And here, when you speak about smart, this is interesting because I don't know, we need to ask ourselves whether smart agriculture in the Western, European, American, Japanese smartness, is this the same smart for Africa? When we speak about wireless sensors for crop water requirement and soil moisture, etc., is that applicable in Africa, in many African countries? So we need to ask ourselves what type of smart technology. So we have to think of low cost, low tech for Africa, because imagine the African farmers, and when we speak, and most of them are small scale farmers. So even moving from the traditional, very traditional surface irrigation to the drip irrigation, which is not a new technology, is not visible for small-scale farmers. So when we speak about smart agriculture, we have really to be careful that it's adaptable to the African circumstances and the size of the traditional farms in countries, not only Egypt, but most of Africa has the same challenge. So I think the last point I would like to mention is capacity building. And I also, again, thank you for considering this dimension in your presentations. And here I would like to link it to the AWARE initiative that I mentioned at the beginning, because the main output of this initiative will be an African hub for building the capacity of Africans in the adaptation to climate change in the area of water and definitely in the area of agriculture. So I would love to collaborate with all of you on this in establishing an African capacity building hub for adaptation to climate change. And I thank you again very much, and I wish you a very successful event. And thank you for the presentation. Also thank you for the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. This has been really guiding, framing the session that we will be now having with the panelists. So can I again invite Evan to the floor and invite Dr. Tembi Mwamakamba. Dr. Tembi, she is the Director of Policy Research and Analysis at the Food Agriculture and Natural Resources Policy Analysis Network. Can I also invite, Sophie is online, right? Yeah? Both of them. Sophie Rotman, she is the producer of Shamba Shape Up, and Patricia Gashinga, Head of Production. Thank you very much. Thank you. Head of Production, the media company. And can I invite Irene Boghdadi? She is the Head of Entrepreneurship and MSMEs, supporting We for Food at the MENA Regional and Innovation Hub. Can you please join? And then can I also invite Dr. Yemi Akimamidjo, did I pronounce it well? Yeah. Who is the Executive Director for the Forum for Agriculture Research in Africa, FARA. He will be giving the concluding remarks at the end. So now the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you again. It's great to have everybody here on the panel. I look forward to the discussion, and also thank His Excellency in his absence for some great remarks on these initiatives. They're very, very helpful. I first want to start off, Tembi, with you. And actually, one of the things that I appreciated was that His Excellency mentioned sort of how research can help with evidence-based decisions for policymakers, and I think that's something that you guys work on quite a bit. So it made me think that it was a good person to ask you the first question to. But with a bit of context here, that the one CGIAR regional integrated initiatives are working on the mission to deliver science and innovation that advance transformation of food, land, and water systems in a climate crisis. And as has been mentioned multiple times today, partnerships are very important. And partnerships with organizations like FANERPAN are important for us in delivering on-the-ground needed agricultural genetic innovations, resilient agricultural and agri-food system management practices, and policy and market interventions. So my question to you, Tembi, is how is your organization partnering with these one CGIAR regional integrated initiatives to realize this mission on the ground?
Thanks, Evan. I think I want to start off by just mentioning that FANERPAN and the CGIAR have got a long-standing relationship. So our relationship dates back way before the challenge research programs, and now we're moving to the regional integrated initiatives, which is quite exciting, which also means we have seen the growth and the change in how we approach work in the different countries that we work in. So within the RII, we are working on the Ukama Ustawi project. We are partners in that. And our role really is to facilitate linkages between what the researchers are doing and make sure that that's translated into actionable evidence that can inform policies. So we've been responsible primarily for convening multi-stakeholder policy dialogues, where we are able to bring together different stakeholders that have a say within the sort of policy space. So we're not just targeting government players, but we are also bringing together, civil society actors to come together with researchers and to be able to sort of maybe sort of interrogate the evidence that's coming out from the research and be able to then translate that into actionable policies that we see. So we are really sort of facilitatory role to make sure that, we have that platform where researchers can then inform the policies that we're seeing.
Great, that's great. Helping to translate the research into actionable decision-making information for policymakers like His Excellency, who is just here, and other partners that we work with on these policy issues. Let me turn now to Patricia and Sophie with the Media-Eye Corporation, who run the Shamba Shape Up TV show you can see up here. And I know I work with you guys very closely on the Shamba Shape Up TV show. I think it's a very exciting partnership that we have, and so I'm happy to have you here with us today from Nairobi. And so I have the same question for you, is how is Media-Eye and the Shamba Shape Up TV show working with the one CGIAR regional integrated initiatives to realize this mission of advancing the transformation of food, land, and water systems in a climate crisis?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. You can hear me all right? It's a real privilege to join you at this COP and have the opportunity to share how we as media have been working with the different CG centers and in particular the Ukama Ustawi initiative to scale up climate adaptation in Kenya and Zambia. At Media, we essentially look at how we can use media to support education and development in sub-Saharan Africa. And we find media to be a really inclusive way and a very low-cost way to reach people and to allow people to access information. And we also know that in order to keep people interested and actually want to access the information, it's also important to entertain them in one way or another. So that's why we've been, over the last decades, the founders of the organization, all of us working there, working with media, have really been looking at using an edutainment model. So we look at really how we can draw in large audiences, educate them, but also entertain them, which is what draws them in. And it really allows us to build large audiences over time and serve both the development, the research, and commercial sectors in doing so. And that's really allowed us to build a sustainable model. So Shamba Shape Up is, as Evan introduced earlier, it's a makeover TV program on smallholder farms. It's been launched in Kenya. It was launched 13 years ago. And on the program, we visit farmers, find out what they're doing, find out what challenges they might have, and then bring in the different partners, such as the different CG centers, to actually solve those problems in very hands-on practical ways. The program is filmed in 2 languages in Kenya, at least. We're in English and Kiswahili. And we're reaching, at this point, over 8 million people every week. So we started off with about 3 million, and we've built that audience over 8 million people over the last 13 years. And it's really because people want to watch the program, which we find is really, really important when it comes to getting people to make changes and to actually adopt, the changes and the advisory that they're seeing. Another thing is that through TV, we're reaching people who are in the cash economy, and they're the ones that are able to take the risk to make those changes. And they again then influence those people who we've described as being the most vulnerable, who might only have access to radio, but for whom their most trusted sources of information, if you ask them, are friends and neighbors, and those are the friends and neighbors that we're typically reaching through television. So the research has shown the program to be particularly impactful in changing knowledge's attitude and behavior. And we've been working with the CG centers over the years to really scale up the research that they've been doing, particularly around climate change. And so essentially the whole Shamba Shape Up model, if you will, is really about scaling science and innovation by working with partners. Over the last 3 years, it's really been our focus to look at climate change adaptation entirely, particularly also reach women and youth. And in 2021, we actually started by working with the CG initiative ICRA in Kenya, very closely working together with Evan team, with CGIAR, with Elri, and we were looking at how can we scale up the key advisory that had been researched for so many decades by the CGA partners. How can we take this research and really bring it to the farmer, particularly in semi and arid areas in that project? So we would look, for example, at improved seed varieties, drought-resistant seed varieties, promoting, for example, pigeon peas in particularly dry areas, looking at making silage and hay for farmers, dairy farmers, so that they could actually keep feeding their cows when the season got dry, and as a result could keep milking and actually sell their milk at a higher price when nobody else had milk in the market. We've been looking at conservation agriculture. So as Dr. Paul mentioned earlier, minimum tillage is it's a really, really important practice, but also looking at low-cost technologies that smallholder farmers can afford. So through this success, we went on to partner with the Ukama Ustawi initiative to again promote key science and innovation that had been researched by CG in Kenya. And actually, crucially, we had the opportunity to take this program and scale it into Zambia. So we've actually just finished filming in Zambia and about to broadcast, and my colleague Patricia can talk more to that, either now or at a later stage. Thank you.
I think, Patricia, why don't you can continue the story, maybe it's good, and briefly, and then we can come back later for some more.
Great. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Evans, and thank you, everybody. It's a real opportunity to be here. Just to add on to what Sophie is saying, yes, we've had the opportunity to scale up what we've done in Kenya for the last 12 years. We recently moved into Uganda and then now went into Zambia. So working with the 1CG centers, working with Ukame Ustawi and ICRA. They were already working with innovative bundles. So we had these 5 bundles that we were able to work with. So we had everything from, solar irrigation, where you can get, financial support to be able to apply for a loan to get a solar, irrigation system, to promoting aquaculture. So looking at the new improved fingerlings, to improved seed variety that are drought resistant and good for the season, to looking at strengthening of different cooperatives that, farmers were working, especially within the soya and legume value chains. And then, finally looking a huge emphasis on gender and social inclusion. So we were able to take all this work that the CG had already been working with different partners, and we were able to scale it up. So we started filming around August. We went out looking for farms that we knew we could actually be able to film with. So these were farms that we had selected very carefully, had issues that we knew that a lot of people who will be watching will have the same issues. So we were able to, set up a team there, build capacity with the local filming crew there, and then start filming. And what is particularly interesting in this, we're calling it now Munda Makeover, and Evan talked about it. So Munda is a small farm. What is actually particularly interesting is that in Kenya, we do film in 2 languages, but we'll be broadcasting this in 3 languages, knowing that Zambia is a very vast country with, different languages. So for a start, we filmed in English and then dubbing the program into, two different languages that are quite popular. So this is Nyanja and Bemba. And this will be broadcast in the national television. This is NBC. And we know that, looking at the stats in terms of audience, you already have about a 3 million audience. So we'll be planning to pull people around that time so that people who are at home are watching. And again, as Sophie said, why TV? It's, you can be able to effectively distribute to scale, reach a huge number of people. And then the other thing is we're also looking at the urban audience, because we also know in Kenya, we've experienced that the urban audience has a huge pull because they watch something on TV and then remember that back home, my mom, my sister, my brother, could use one of these things. So it's been a really interesting journey. Just finished filming, and we'll start broadcasting in the next, I think, 2 weeks. So we're really, really excited to see how this goes on. And we've been able to pull in also some commercial partners, because it's essential that we also work with commercial partners to make sure that the program is sustainable going forward. So this is not a one-off thing. So we hope to continue working with the different centers and also bring in different partners as we continue. I'm not sure if the link is working for the video. If not, I mean, we can maybe show you guys a small thing. If not, it's okay.
I'm not sure about the video on our end. I don't think it is, but if you guys have a video, maybe it can be shared. And maybe while you bring that up, tell me if you think you can get it. Irene, I'll move over to you for a question and jump to a program that you work on. The Water and Food for Energy, We4F program, is one program that's working on scaling and accelerated delivery and supporting innovators, SMEs, NGOs, other organizations to scale water, energy, food nexus innovations in Africa. Could you talk about and tell us a bit more about We4F, what its impact has been to date, and what are some of the lessons learned, good and bad, that the CGIAR's regional integrated initiatives can learn from as we start off?
Sure. So I just want to make sure you can hear me, and I'd like to thank as well the host of this panel. And first, I'd like to thank the audience who's here, regardless of the freezing, the freezing venue. So troopers, yeah, I know it's a bit ironic, but yeah, definitely a big thank you to CGIAR and to FAO and to the Rockefeller Foundation, yeah, for hosting us today, and also to His Excellency Dr. Hani Sweden for being with us and for his support. So as you mentioned, the We for Food stands for Water and Energy for Food, and actually it would be great if we can also showcase the video if it's ready. If not, I'll walk you through it. But basically, it's really interesting to see that. Sorry about that.
Are there no videos?
As the
Videos or no videos?
I think maybe it's because there's two mics on at the same time. That's probably okay. Sure. Okay. Yeah, it's perfect. Thank you. All right, so We for Food, Water, Energy for Food, I actually represent the MENA hub, so the hub operating across the MENA region. We work in about 10 different countries in the MENA region, and I represent the technical assistance team, so I'm a technical assistance specialist as part of the We for Food MENA hub. So We for Food is a donor-funded project, and I invite you to go on their website. It's probably one of the most resource-rich websites that I've come across for more information. And as you said, Evan, it's designed to scale innovations that are water and or energy saving across the food and agriculture value chain in Africa and in the MENA region as well, and now also in Southeast Asia. So our goal is to, there's a very high focus on emerging markets. There's also a very strong focus, as in all the other programs that we've seen, on women, on vulnerable communities, and especially on small holder farmers. And the ultimate goal is to enhance the climate resilience of these agriculture and food value chains, and to enhance the livelihood of smallholder farmers. So hopefully we'll get the chance to see the video in a bit. we do this through a couple of modalities that were also mentioned earlier, and I'll stress a little bit on those points that maybe were not mentioned earlier in terms of lessons learned moving forward. So the way we support the scale-up of these innovations, and the innovations could be, usually through mid to late stage enterprises or organizations. They could be for-profit or non-for-profit, and we offer them a suite of comprehensive services over a 2-year period on average to be able to help them scale up as organizations. So there's a lot of focus on organizational development for scaling up. So the first modality is deep technical assistance, which if as most of you probably know, these are deep consultancy services, not one-off mentorship sessions or trainings, but they're actually deep consultancy services complementary to the capacity building initiatives that we work on that are not readily available and accessible in emerging markets. So each innovator has probably between 1 to 3 deep technical assistance interventions that actually can support them in scaling up their operations and in reaching smallholder farmers and being more accessible and affordable, etc. So as examples, we've worked with a Morocco-based firm, or a couple of Morocco-based firms, on redesigning their organizational structure to be able to better scale up to smallholder farmers and also diversify their revenue streams to the sales of carbon credits, for example. We've also worked with a digital ag company to switch from being a direct service provider to farmers only, but to also be used as an alternative credit risk developer. We've worked with entities on enhancing their user experience and user design of their apps and web page to be more accessible to smallholder farmers and to be more inclusive to women, etc. So these are a couple of examples of deep, let's say, consultancy services that are offered to smaller scale companies that were in a market where it does not markets that do not necessarily serve small and medium enterprises, and makes them more accessible and affordable. Another modality is investment readiness and brokerage. So working very closely with the innovators to help them become investment ready, to help them access different types of debt, equity, hybrid instruments. So it's not only getting them up to the stage where they're ready to seek and leverage these investments, but also supporting them and deeply supporting them in fundraising. Another component is the enabling environment, as was mentioned earlier, actually cross-cuttingly in all the presentations that we heard. And this piece is related to, as we mentioned earlier, not only working with the enterprises through technical assistance and investment readiness, but also working with the environment, their surrounding environment, working with different partners such as NGOs, civil society, even the private sector, to create a more, an environment conducive to business and conducive to their scale up, whether it's on policy recommendation level or on access to finance or on even the provision of market data and market resources. The fourth piece of it is end user financing, which I'll probe on a little bit more maybe in the next question, but we not only work with enhancing access to finance to these organizations, but we also work, there's a special component dedicated to financing the end users of these companies to help them, or these organizations to help them unlock their markets. And as we all know, working in this sector, the capital cost of technologies that we were talking about, whether it's an efficient irrigation technology or a biogas system or a solar irrigation system, the capex is very high, and this usually limits the ability for these companies to scale and limits the adoption of smallholder farmers. So we work with financial institutions such as microfinance entities, banks, to help them develop specialized financing products for farmers, but we also work with the organizations themselves on how to embed end user financing schemes in their business models, whether it's through enhanced payment services or other means, or financing from their own balance sheets. So these are the four modalities, and this is, in terms of lessons learned, maybe I can probe a little bit on that in the last question.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you very much, Irene. Fantastic, and really exciting work that you guys are doing on bringing finance in, supporting the agribusiness ecosystem there, and help deliver the kinds of innovations that are needed to the farmers and agri-food system actors that we work with. I note that we're getting a bit short on time, so I think I'm going to cut down the questions a bit here, maybe do one final round before we turn to some final comments. Is that okay if we take, say, 5 or so more minutes? Something like that, we're okay on time. Okay, great. Thanks. So maybe if you guys want to think of some final thoughts, but I'll pose a question to you as you go through those thoughts. The CGIAR has a new strategy that was recently launched with the development of these new initiatives. And the strategy has a set of 3 impact pathways, saying there's not just one pathway for how we can make change, but 3 different ways that are focused on here. And some of these we've already heard come up. One is on capacity development, that's key, and we've heard that come up. His Excellency mentioned that in particular. Second is on innovation delivery, so developing those innovations and delivering them on the ground. And the third impact pathway is on policy action. And so again, it's not that we can just work in each of these separately, but it's about how we work together in these. And so I'm wondering, as you reflect back on this session and on the partnerships that we have here, how your organization is working to support or working down these 3 different impact pathways. Maybe it's only one, but how you do. And what are some of what are the actions you're doing, and what are some of the needs that you see, and even the challenges in working down those pathways to be able to realize, again, the mission that I mentioned earlier. And we'll go around, Tembi, let's start with you, and we'll go around the same way that we did before.
Thank you, Evan. I think just reflection on what you have asked. As FANAPAN, what we do is we have built our sort of legacy, or our core reason of existence by investing in partners on the ground. So we are a regional organization, but working across 17 countries. And what we have done is we have invested and committed to working with local organizations, local research institutions, because one of the reasons why we were established was so that we could build the capacity of indigenous policy experts across the continent, instead of having, fly-in consultants that sort of advise. But what we want to do is research organizations and our universities in each of the countries to have that capacity to be able to produce policy advice that is used by our policymakers. So I think one thing really, it's about building lasting relationships. So really investing in making sure that the partners that you're working with have the capacity to actually deliver what you want to work on. So it's about also understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses and helping each other along the way to be able to address. If you've got weaknesses, we're not going to leave you behind just because you're failing on something, but we're going to sort of strengthen that area where you're weak in, and continue working together. And I think also it's about being honest and being an open book. Most of these partnerships is money involved, and often it comes down to who has the bigger budget. Whoever has the bigger budget is the one that dictates the terms of the partnership. And what we try to do is we want to make sure that we are honest and upfront about the resources that are available and how those resources are shared. And I think that's what we also want to see from the CGIAR. But then also from the policy side of things, I think we have to think about co-production of research that informs policy, which means our policymakers, our government players, they have to be part of forming the agenda. Remember, when researchers often do research, outside, and they want that research to feed into a space, whereas they've missed the point of saying, can we ask the questions to the policymakers of what they want us to research on? And I think that's a really important part. The research agenda has to be informed by the needs of not just the policymakers, but the farmers as well, and all other stakeholders that are involved. And I think those are sort of important things. And as FANAPAN, we play that facilitator role of saying, can we have that open platform where we can discuss these issues and we can agree together on what the research agenda has to be and what the policy priorities are.
Great, thanks, Tembi. Being demand-driven, and you guys are a very important partner for us, and I think you highlighted many of the reasons for that. Martin, I also note that you're still here, and actually after Irene, I would welcome you to also come in and give any comments or remarks that you have, if you would like, on this, on the question or anything as some kind of concluding remarks before Yemi comes on up. Patricia, let me move to you. for some remarks also on this question.
Thank you, Evan. I think for us as media, I know we look at the ways we can support education and development. And one of the things we do is scale up some of these interventions that have, been researched, and we know that they are good. I think as an organization, we are touching across all the three sectors. If you're talking about capacity building, we are, building the capacity of the farmers by, having the interventions shown on TV, and for them to, see it and be able to implement it, and also telling them where do you find it. And this is, for us, this is, how you use it, the how and, where to get it is quite important. And if you look at innovation, TV in itself, as traditional as it is still a very innovative tool. We just don't produce the TV station, the TV program. We also have a backup system that assists the farmer. So if you watch something on Munda Makeover or Shamba Shape Up, there's a system for you to get in touch with us and get more information about what you've seen and get more support. So for us, that's quite critical. And then when we move on to policy actions, it's very important and crucial for us to give this information that has already been put out there. It's a way for us to communicate the policy actions that have come into place, the new innovations that are now, being researched and are now, being effective. So for us, I think inclusively we touch on the three pillars that the 1CG has been working on. And it's a great way, tool to be able to scale up some of these interventions, to be able to reach, a huge number. As my colleague Sophie talked about, it's very cost effective. The number of farmers that you can train may be limited, as one of the panelists said, it all goes down to money. But TV is something very inclusive, so people are able to watch it. And, the potential reach, because it's relatable and repeatable. So people are able to see it constantly and have it on their mind. And that sort of also brings in some, form of behavior change. So the knowledge, attitude, and behavior change is quite important for us. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Patricia. And I think connecting with people is something that's so important, and that you guys do great through the TV programs that you have. Irene, let me turn to you for some final thoughts. And if you want to reflect on how we put together capacity development, innovation delivery, policy action to achieve the goals that we have. Might blow me off the stage. I'll survive.
Okay. Test.
Good.
Okay. All right. So I just want to, if you don't mind, just mention a couple of numbers, because this is really what keeps us going. We're halfway through our program, so there's a lot of lessons learned, and I invite you to get in touch with our team in your future programming. So in less than 2 years, we've worked as, when I say we, I mean, it's basically the MENA hub. There's also the East Africa hub, the West Africa hub, and the Central and South African hub, and of course, Southeast Asia is being established. But just for the 4 hubs that have currently been established, we've worked with around 135 innovators working in the water and or energy food nexus. They've collectively reached out to, or their technologies and their solutions are in the hands and being used by 500,000 end users in the food and agriculture value chains in their regions, supporting them in producing around 2.9 million tons of food and saving 500 million kilowatt hours of energy, reducing water consumption by 1.7 billion liters, as Dr. Hani was mentioning, that just by technologies like switching from flood irrigation to slightly more energy efficient and water efficient technologies, you can reach these numbers. We also, as a collective, supported the companies or the organizations in less than 2 years, generate 121 million in sales and 34 million in private investments, leveraged similar KPIs to programs that we've seen earlier. And I think, Evan, in terms of lessons learned, and this is really based on this collective experience, as you mentioned earlier, and as Patricia was mentioning, this idea of access to knowledge is so important and sometimes taken for granted. But we've seen that in the regions that we're operating in, information access is it's either non-existent or it's very asymmetric. And I think what the WIFO Food has done very nicely is actually work on both the supply side and on the demand side. So providing market studies and surveys that are accessible to such organizations, which usually do not have access to such data, whether it's on the policies or the regulatory environment of the countries in which they're operating in, whether it's on the business opportunities and investment opportunities or the value chain gaps, as we mentioned earlier, whether it's maps, as you mentioned earlier. So access to data, I mean, this is probably the overlap between capacity building and, you know, enabling environment. Access to market information is extremely crucial and unfortunately sometimes taken for granted in emerging markets. So this is the point, sorry, not only the demand side, but also on the supply side. So also on the ecosystems in which these organizations are operating in, who are the investors, who are the, you know, other similar organizations and the potential competition, etc. There's also, and this is probably more on the enabling environment side, but also developing financial products that are suited to mid to late stage enterprises, be they for-profit or non-for-profit, that are also suited to their local context given their regulatory environments, and that also focus not just on corporate financing, but also on the financing of their end users. I think having this holistic financing approach, both on the end user side and on the organizational side, is extremely important. That also considers a gender lens, because, you know, we were able to achieve a lot of these targets, and hopefully this will, you know, increase in the next 2 years through using these approaches. So, you know, the access to market data, in addition to everything that we mentioned earlier, and the piece related to you know, fine-tuned, customized financing products, both for the end users and also for the organizations themselves to grow their capacities.
Great, thank you. Yeah, the importance of information and data that's targeted. I like what you said, a holistic financing approach that's needed, not just for one, but there's many different kinds of finance that's needed out there. I'm going to move towards wrapping up the panel. Martin, I see that you're still here with us, and as I said, I'd be happy to have you, if you want to make a couple short comments. We are short on time, but to come in and comment as we wrap up this panel here, and then we'll turn to Yemi for some final comments.
Good, because I was already wondering, because it's great that my friend Yemi is on the panel there, and later the week I will be there as well, Yemi and others. No, I think this was a very interesting, I think it's the first event at the COP, right? And I already tweeted about this session, because I think this shows the excitement of this novel approach to regionally integrated initiatives. So, because they are demand driven from farmer and consumer, both, very important. And as I know that especially the U2 also has a very strong consumer component in there. And a science-based solution. And I don't know if the minister is still in the room. I couldn't see it, but it was very inspiring to hear a minister with a science background also coming up with, we need science-based solutions, because solutions have to work, but also they shouldn't be staying on the shelf. So that's why we have these regional integrated initiatives to really, with partners, getting it to the farmer and to the consumer. And that's what is in impact at scale through partnerships. And I met Sophie it was Ethiopia, I think, at one of our meetings, and I was very excited about the whole Shamba Shape Up system. Can you imagine reaching 8 million farmers on a weekly basis? And I would like to link this to what I heard last week from our social scientists of the CGIAR. They gave presentations in also one of the sessions on the enabling environment that the other panelists also indicated, so important. They indicated that one of the most effective things for farmers are instructions by video. And especially now with internet, they have access with smartphones very often, so you can look at it later. And I'm a sailor. I've sometimes on my boat, I have very complex things I have to repair, and I just look on a video, and then I can do the most complex things. So for farmers, this is really working, and reaching 8 million of them with our innovations together with all our partners, right? Because nothing is only CGIAR, it's all together with others. And the other example on stage with 500,000 farmers with hubs and things. I hope we are already linked, but the fact that you're there indicates that your organization is already linked. And then the financing that you mentioned, that is important, because that's also related to governance. Smallholder farmers most of the time don't have much money. So it's always, and cannot take any risk. So we have to de-risk them and help them with financial systems. So I really hope also that Sophie and Patricia also make sure that we have a nice Shamba Shape Up report from this meeting to those great farmers. And if we can support them further in the future with these initiatives, I really look forward to it. And also, again, to meet the farmers, because that's why we do it. We do it for them. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Martin. And with that, I would like to close the panel discussion. Again, thank you, Martin. Thank you, Irene. Thank you, Tembi. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Patricia. Really great discussions up here. I appreciate it. And with that, we'll turn to our concluding remarks from Dr. Yemi Akimbamijo, who is the Executive Director of the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa, FARA. And we have the pleasure of having him here today to give the concluding remarks. Yemi.
Thank you very much, Ivan, for moderating a very interesting session. I know the time is far gone, so I'll be very brief. But first, let me put it on record that I feel greatly honored. Inga is in here. She touched base with me only a few days ago, and I'm like, oh, why me? But I just want to say that I feel greatly honored to be able to give a few remarks as we close this great session. When I look at the title of this session, the first key word there for me is acceleration. Is the acceleration or the catalysis of a process that we have, wherein we've suffered a little bit of lackluster for some time. We're here now in Sharm el-Sheikh. It's been 10 years since Durban, and it's been 5 since Marrakesh. But a lot has happened, and a lot is happening. I'm so glad to hear from Patricia and Sophie on the Shamba Shake Up and the great work you're doing, Irene, and also from the FANPAN end. But we understand that the challenge that is confronting Africa, what has kept Africa, or what do we need to do to have a food secure Africa, is a function of we've been devoid of science. Let me put it that way. But I'm also very happy that a new character is evolving. This new character is the 1CG. The 1CG is a seamless fusion that hopefully will respond to the demands of the continent. A few years ago, I was myself head of food and agriculture at the African Union when Malabo declarations were made. Now, the intention at that time was that in a matter of years, we will double productivity, we will triple inter-African trade, we will meet the sustainable development goals, we will contribute to the Africa we want, Agenda 2063, but all of those are beginning to shake in our hands, and we may not reach them. But the good thing that the 1CG is becoming a positive force that can help us in the catalysis that has so eluded us, makes it a matter of urgency and timeliness. I think they are telling me to stop. In other words, I am very happy with all that has been said, and I do hope that this COP, as has been said by the Honorable Minister and by the previous speakers, this is the COP for Africa. And in many respects, as I said, it will help us to reach the goal. I mean, SDG is only 8 years down the road. STIZA is only 3 years down the road. Agenda 2063 is still far away, but we can and we will. It's time for us to break the jinx, if I can use it that way, the transformation that has eluded us and the resilience jinx that has held us down. So I do hope that with all that we've said, as the English adage goes, the tree bends as the wind blows. Our science will depend how far. It's not a lot, as I say, of the blah blahs, it's a lot more of the do-dos. What is the science community going to do to help accelerate towards a food-secure Africa and a very, very nutritious future? Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to have been able to make these few remarks.
Thank you all. Thank you for the keynote speakers. Thank you for the minister. Thank you for a great panel, excellent concluding remark, and excellent moderation, Evan. And thank you for being patient. And I hope it was useful. And I think we started off on the right footing as CGIAR, FAO, and the Rockefeller Pavilion. So join us please for the small reception outside here. No, it's no longer, huh? There is, please join us. I'll discover like you if the food remains. Please join us. Yeah.